With the recent accomplishments of the religious right fresh in our memory, I believe it's time to return to our discussion of the psychology of right-wing authoritarianism. If you haven't seen my original video on the psychology of authoritarianism, I've linked it in the description below, and I recommend watching it before you watch this one. Quick disclaimer, please understand that I am not here to engage in theological debates in the comments. I am simply presenting and interpreting what I've learned about the psychology of the religious right based on my own reading and personal experience. For those out of the loop, the religious right, or Christian right, is a collection of political factions, including conservative Protestants, Catholics, and Mormons, that are characterized by their strong support of socially conservative and traditionalist policies. These factions seek to influence politics with their conservative and fundamentalist interpretation of the teachings of Christianity. They do not represent Christianity as a whole. The religious right amplifies and advances conservative positions on issues such as creationism, queer rights, sex education, drugs, alcohol, abortion, and more. The movement can be found in parts of Europe, the Caribbean, Latin America, and Africa, thanks in part to American evangelicals' outreach in the global south. But the loudest and most recognizable representatives of the religious right are found in the US of A. Christian fundamentalists, now known as evangelicals, got started over a century ago, growing from within Protestantism in response to developments in the then modern world that cast strong doubt on the supposed divine origins of the Bible. A series of pamphlets, known as the Fundamentals, a Testimony to the Truth, were published and distributed between 1910 and 1915 to refute claims that the Bible was man-made, rewritten as time passed, and laced with myths, biases, and inaccurate history. Over the course of the 90 essays published in this series, focus soon shifted from biblical inerrancy and foundational theological beliefs towards scathing critiques of more contemporary topics, such as evolution and socialism. By the late 1940s, Protestant fundamentalism had taken on a new moniker and a renewed purpose. The evangelical movement, led by figures such as Reverend Billy Graham, intensified its very particular stances on Christianity and on the role of Christianity in society and politics. After a series of Supreme Court decisions enforcing a greater degree of separation of church and state in the 1960s, the movement geared up to push its political agenda, culminating with the rise of Ronald Reagan, whose electoral victory was made possible thanks to the support and mobilization of evangelical congregations. This religious right base has been a staple of American politics ever since, throwing their support behind Donald Trump in 2016 and manipulating the broader culture war, domestically and internationally, for the past few decades. Before we can properly dive into our exploration of religious authoritarians in particular, I'm going to quickly summarize the points made in my last video on right-wing authoritarians, or RWAs. The right-wing authoritarian personality is defined by three primary traits: a high degree of submission to the established, legitimate authorities in their society, high levels of aggression in the name of these authorities, and a high level of conventionalism. People who score highly on the right-wing authoritarianism scale tend to believe people should trust and submit to authority in virtually all circumstances, that right and might are on their side, and that everyone should live by the norms that their authorities have decreed. Within the psychology of the authoritarian follower, you can find patterns of illogical thinking, a highly compartmentalized mind, blatant double standards and hypocrisy, a great lack of self-awareness, intense ethnocentrism, and a high degree of dogmatism. All these traits and more can be found manifest in the religious right. But not all authoritarian followers are religious fundamentalists. Besides the RWA scale, social psychologists Bob Altemeyer, author of The Authoritarians, and Bruce Huntsberger established the religious fundamentalism scale, linked below, in order to identify a person's attitudes toward whatever religious beliefs they held. Whether a person agrees or disagrees with statements such as, no single book of religious teachings contains all the intrinsic, fundamental truths about life, and to lead the best, most meaningful life, one must belong to the one fundamentally true religion, regardless of whether they are Christian, Muslim, Hindu, or Jewish, can help researchers identify the common underlying psychological elements in the thinking of people who are called fundamentalists. As you can probably imagine, people who score highly on the religious fundamentalism scale also tend to score highly on the right-wing authoritarianism scale. The question is, which comes first, authoritarianism or fundamentalism? Or is it more of a package deal? One of the primary commonalities between authoritarianism and fundamentalism is their shared emphasis on ethnocentrism. Fundamentalists place a lot of emphasis on their religious identity above all else, and as a general rule, Christian fundamentalists do not like other religions. When it comes to the religious ethnocentrism scale, Christian fundamentalists tend to agree with statements like, our country should always be a Christian country, and other beliefs should be ignored in our public institutions, and disagree with statements such as, if there is a heaven, good people will go to it no matter what religion they belong to, if any. Children raised in a fundamentalist household internalize their family's religious affiliation and mentally designate those excluded from that in-group. Even without outward expressions of prejudice, ethnocentric emphasis tends to naturally sow the seeds of prejudice anyway, and not just prejudice of the religious variety. In stark contrast to the well-known Christian message of brotherly love, it has long been recognized by social scientists that religious fundamentalism and racial prejudice correlate quite strongly. For those with a passing familiarity with America's racist history, this shouldn't come as a surprise. The church remains one of the most segregated institutions of the 21st century, and white churches were often at the forefront in the defense of slavery and segregation. And when it comes to America's imperialist wars, for many fundamentalist churches, the Sermon on the Mount and its message of blessing to the merciful, the meek, and the peacemakers goes right out the window. Another particular element present in the mental life of fundamentalists, shared with authoritarian followers, is their blatant reliance on double standards. Freedom for me, but not for thee. For example, Christian fundamentalists will simultaneously despise any accommodations extended toward the religious practices of Muslim students, while demanding that all students submit to their own religious practices. They support minority rights and beyond, where Christians are a minority, while enforcing majority rights over all others, where Christians are a majority. All the other fluff and rhetoric is just that. Fluff and rhetoric. Rationalizations that can be as flexible as they need to be in the moment. Dogmatism is also fundamental to the psychology of fundamentalists. So fundamental, in fact, that even the word of the Bible itself won't faze them. Because the divine inspiration and inerrancy of the Bible are two key pillars of their beliefs, Christian fundamentalists will refuse to accept clear contradictions within the word. Take, for example, the four Gospels of the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Each Gospel lays out a contradictory account of the events of Resurrection Sunday, one of the most crucial events in Christianity. From who was visiting the tomb, to who was at the tomb, to where Jesus first appeared to the disciples, to how long Jesus stayed on earth after resurrecting. While other more progressive Christian denominations are able to accept human error within the Bible and evolve their opinions with the times, pun intended, fundamentalists cannot, no matter what. That's dogmatism, plain and simple. As Altamaya says at one point in The Authoritarians, ultimately, the true believers were saying, I believe so strongly that the Bible is perfect that there's nothing, not even the Bible itself, that can change my mind. If that seems like an enormous self-contradiction, put it on the list. We are dealing with very compartmentalized minds. They're not really interested in coming to grips with what's actually in the Bible, so much as mounting a defense of what they want to believe about the Bible, come hell or Noah's high water. It may or may not surprise you to learn that most fundamentalists have not read the Bible from cover to cover, despite their valiant defense of it, because dogmatism takes no effort. You don't need to know very much to insist that you're right and nothing could possibly change your mind. You don't need to keep up with the science and the changes therein in order to oppose it. There's comfort to be had in unshakable certainty, regardless of reality. And while you might think that if a person truly believed that the Bible was the word of the almighty, omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent God, that they would put everything aside to study it, wholly, you'd be wrong. they haven't even read most of it. For most Christian fundamentalists, the Bible is a terms and conditions that they scroll down to agree. The reason many religious fundamentalists and/or authoritarian followers feel so unreachable is because there's no conversation to be had with unquestioning certainty. I've been painting a rather unflattering picture of religious fundamentalists, but we should keep in mind that despite the consequences of their beliefs and practices upon the wider public, they find immense joy, happiness, and comfort in their stream of the faith. Because they view themselves as part of God's select few, they feel protected, forgiven, and loved, and they're more than ready to rejoin their loved ones in the hereafter and embrace their Heavenly Father in eternity. Their beliefs provide a ready explanation for all the problems of life, and unlike many in this capitalist hellscape, most fundamentalists actually enjoy a fairly supportive community of fellow believers, though conditions apply. Yet many people, especially fundamentalists' own children, turn their back on all this happiness. Why is that the case? Why is there so often a great exodus of apostates from the church? It seems to come down to fundamentalists' approach to religious upbringing. You see, another key component of religious fundamentalism is zealotry. Fundamentalists are more likely than most to say that their religion colors and shapes almost everything they experience in life. No other ideology or belief system could be as true or valid. It alone has all the answers, and nothing else could be more important. Hence their full commitment of time, money, and energy toward their cause. Evangelicals go to church more, they tithe more, and they read the Bible more than any other denomination or sect of Christendom. They don't quit. And true to their name, they don't want you to miss out either, because evangelicals evangelize. Now, when it comes to raising children, there is no space in that zealotry for free choice or for any real difference in belief. So when Altmaier surveyed the parents of university students, he found that fundamentalist parents did not want their children to decide about religion, but instead wanted their progeny to believe what they believed and pass it on to their descendants. This heavy emphasis on the family religion can sometimes backfire. Fundamentalists typically believe that people leave the church because they just want to sin. And it's true that the demands and rules of the religion can be quite restricting, motivating some to abandon the faith. But when apostates are asked why they left, if you were to ask me why I left, sin would be far from my mind. For a lot of apostates, hypocrisy within the church is a primary motivating factor. From the gossip and backbiting, to the judgmental attitudes of the leaders and members alike, to the abusers the church helps protect, to the intolerant political stances of fundamentalist churches, especially related to LGBTQ+ issues and abortion rights. For others, it's about the religion itself. They may read the Bible and notice all the inconsistencies, injustices, prejudices, biases, and brutalities therein, and learn how the Bible was put together and translated. Some just find it difficult to square its content and its evolution with the idea that this book was a God's divine and perfect message to guide humanity to salvation. Prayers for guidance met with silence, and fear of hell's flames may not reign in their curiosity forever. And to hold to the prejudices one has been taught and accept the base premises of the religion may prove unconscionable, especially considering the integrity and conscience their upbringing helped to build. The truth the church professes itself to be may just have too many holes for one to pretend to ignore, and so, as difficult and isolating as it may be, many just leave. My spiritual journey and political journey have overlapped, as my move away from fundamentalism coincided with my move toward anarchism. But not everyone will follow my journey. There are many Christian anarchists and conservative unbelievers. But regardless, fundamentalist churches are still massively influential institutions filled with authoritarian followers that cannot be ignored. Their self-righteous hostility towards certain marginalized groups, their rejection of open-mindedness, their submission to authority, their aggression in the name of authority, and their desire to enforce Christian nationalism make them powerful, dangerous players in this political landscape. The question remains, how do we deal with the religious right? And to be quite honest with you, I'm not really sure. I haven't reached a point in my personal life where I'm able to engage with these folks on matters of faith and politics, nor do I think I'm the best person to do so. I do know, however, that they need to be kept away from positions of power. The channels they use to achieve their political aims may not perfectly align with the means to our ends, but that doesn't mean they should be able to push their politics in the public sphere unchallenged. As we work to dismantle the systems that help uphold their power, we must also develop critical alternative media, protest, sabotage, and other avenues of action to help us fight back. And we must remember to both oppose and propose. As we oppose their efforts to seize greater political power, we must simultaneously propose a better model of the faith. I believe Christian anarchists and liberation theologists are in the best position to reach out to the people within these churches and offer them a different perspective on the faith they hold so dear. A perspective that emphasizes the liberation of the oppressed and marginalized, values diversity, and recognizes the importance of access to higher education. After all, conservative and fundamentalist interpretations of Christianity are not the only form of Christianity out there. Perhaps by taking an almost a specificist social insertion approach to religious outreach, some fundamentalists can find a healthier and more inclusive understanding of their Christianity. But all of these efforts must begin, first and foremost, with an understanding of the psychology of the religious right. I hope this video has helped. All power to all the people. Peace. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share with your fellow peoples. Thanks once again, of course, to the family, including our newest members, Sergeant Thumbs, Agrifos, Drew Sellingmore, Lind, Hannah Rollins, and Daniel Winston Chilton. Join these beautiful humans and support me too on patreon.com/saintdrew. Check out all my other videos for a range of radical topics. Follow me on Twitter @_saintdrew. Thanks again. Peace.